This podcast is not intended to be a scholarly or authoritative source. Never Have Y'all Ever is an entertainment podcast that explores Texas culture, history, and subcultures through personal experiences and opinions. We encourage listeners to conduct their own research, consult reliable sources for historical or cultural information. Giddy up. Let's get into it.
Now, they say everything's bigger in Texas. That's true, but what about the stories, the one we all knew?
Okay, second episode, new day.
Here we go.
Here we go. We're getting a little bit better. It's our
Yep.
second rodeo.
Yeah. Stretching our sea legs a little
A
bit.
little bit. So today we're here to talk about the Yellow Rose of Texas.
Yep.
I'm Melissa McGavick, and I'm here with
Your co-host, Lindsey Flynn.
Lindsey Flynn. So today we're going to try something different than we did with the first episode. We're going to see what works best. But if you remember the first episode, listeners, if you heard it, we did the first 5 facts at the beginning and did all 5 at the same time. This time, we're going to do one at a time, kind of discuss each one and see if that maybe does a better flow. So we'll see.
Yeah,
right?
This one's a little bit more educational.
It is.
I mean, it was for me.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
And this is part of our show. So we want to talk about Texas history and some of the legends that come behind it, for both for Texans and non-Texans and all of our friends moving here every day.
Yes.
So here we go. Fact number 1. You ready?
Let's do it.
The Yellow Rose of Texas refers to a legendary figure associated with the 1836 Battle of San Jacinto, a pivotal event in the Texas Revolution. The most common story ties this title to a woman named Emily D. West, also known as Emily Morgan, although historical accuracy surrounding this legend is debated. And go.
So it's funny because as soon as this topic popped up on our topic board, it was like instantaneously I could hear the song in my head. It was wild. It was like I was born with it already in there on loop.
And how does it go?
The Yellow Rose of Texas song, But no, it was really funny because I don't think I ever stopped to really think about the history behind this.
Sure.
And I have to say that I'm glad that you brought it up. And it was really cool for me to do some research on this woman, because it's a story that, that every Texan needs to be able to tell. And it's pretty cool that there's a woman behind it. So how did you come about this?
So when I think about symbols of Texas, I think that a yellow rose is as transient, maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, but as marked in my head as much as like a Texas flag, an armadillo, a cowboy hat, yellow rose. And what's interesting to me about that is kind of like Texas football, you just grew up with that, right? But yellow rose is not our state flower.
Right.
We're not necessarily known for growing. I mean, you can grow yellow roses in Texas.
Sure.
But it's not like it's not germane to this area.
Yeah.
Or native. So it's interesting to me, like, what is this? And I think it is one of those stories that is romanticized and that it's a legend that's kind of changed over the years.
Yes.
And different people know different things.
Right.
And, of course, in the state of Texas, if you went to middle school here in 7th grade, you have Texas history all year. That is what you do the entire year of 7th grade. So it's kind of interesting to me looking back. I can't, for my memory's sake, I can't remember what I actually learned about her or what I was told, but definitely the part of her. So the fact that the pivotal event in San Jacinto was the Texas Revolution where we won, so it was pretty fucking pivotal. So that would have been when we finally had independence from Mexico and Santa Ana, and we certainly learned about that in history class. San Jacinto itself as a location is really near Houston, where I grew up.
Right.
So, I mean, we would go to field trips down to San Jacinto all the time. But the legend I remember about the Yellow Rose of Texas was that it was this woman of the night that the Texas Army essentially their troops were not nearly the volume of the Mexican troops for this battle, and that they snuck her in to Santa Ana's tent and essentially distracted him while his entire army was just kind of getting rattled. So that, of course, fast forward, is probably not true at all.
Sure.
But that is what I grew up understanding about her. And the Yellow Rose of Texas was that she was of mixed race, and that was what people called her Yellow Rose of Texas. And so I don't know. I think there's pieces of that are true, but it's interesting to me, and I'd be interested to find out from our listeners what they know about the Yellow Rose of Texas, or what that means, or what they've heard, or what they learned in 7th grade Texas history.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I don't remember. Number one, thank you for conjuring up 7th grade history in Texas, because I can tell you exactly who my teacher was and where I was, and I don't recall learning this story.
Oh, I see. I don't know. I know we learned the Battle of San Jacinto.
Oh, 100%.
But I don't know how much Emily came up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This was new to me, and I absolutely devoured it. And so I think one of the funniest things that I came across, of course, like you said, to your point, there's different versions of this, telling the story. One of them was, so Sam Houston, whenever he left the area, kind of left her behind, and people didn't know if it was on purpose, strategically done or not, because of her beauty. But she ended up, going over to Santa Anna's tent. And what I read was that she was accompanied by a small, a younger boy. And he is the one that ran off to go tell Sam Houston what was going on, where they were located.
Oh, wow.
And the morning of... Yes. And then the morning of, this is my favorite part of it, and you'll know why when I say it, but that Sam Houston was watching from, and the troops were from watching from a while away, or, back. And they were having a champagne brunch there at Santa Anna's tent. And then whenever Sam Houston and troops attacked, Santa Anna came out of the tent and had his pants down around his knees.
That's the story. Now, I don't know how much of that is true. I have learned a lot more about Emily West since then. She definitely was not a lady of the night. She was very educated. She was also from, I believe it was Connecticut. Yes, that's our next fact. She was a free woman at the time, which is really interesting and kind of comes with its own pieces, especially in 1836. But it's, and it should be, for the listeners that maybe don't recall that 7th grade, or that don't know Texas history, it should be known too. At this point in the Texas Revolution, we were behind a little bit.
Yeah, we were getting our ass kicked.
We were getting our ass kicked.
We really were.
Remember, the Alamo was everybody died, and Goliad, same.
Slaughter.
So we, at this point, we were definitely what's that term? It'll come to me. Anyway, I'm going to go into the underdog. Jesus, there it was.
There you go.
The underdog at this point. So the fact that we kind of came back, and whether or not she had anything to do with it, is kind of interesting to me.
It's a great legend. And there has to be a little, almost like, our West Texas stereotypes. I feel like there's a little bit of truth peppered in with stuff like this.
Sure.
So,
and why shouldn't there be, after a couple hundred years and a couple hundred people have talked about it in generations?
Yes.
So our next fact is Emily was a free African-American woman, reportedly from Connecticut. She is believed to have come to Texas under a work contract, and it should be noted that freedom then was often conditional and came with severe limitations. So, thinking about what that meant to an African-American woman in 1836, I'm sure, we have to take that into account. It was just a different, very hard time in our history.
Absolutely.
So,
which is why her story is so important.
Super
important.
I
mean, to be an African American and then a woman, and you're living in those, hostile environments. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, and let's just say that maybe, only 30% of this story is true. At least her name pulled through, and we're still talking about her today, which I think is the coolest part, about me getting to research her.
She's really cool. And I think, coming up on the 200th anniversary in the next, decade, of Texas independence, I think you're going to hear more and more and more about people like her that made such a huge difference for us, or legends that like her that made such a huge difference. So, as a woman, I think that is incredible, and I look forward to learning more about her.
Same.
Raise your glass and celebrate at the Granbury Wine Celebration, Friday, Saturday, April 25th and 26th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sip award-winning Texas wines, savor delicious bites, and soak in the charm of historic Granbury. With live music, artisan vendors, and unforgettable flavors, this is the wine lovers event you don't want to miss. Sip, savor, celebrate in Granbury, Texas. Get your tickets now at granburywine.com.
At Trevo Creative, that's Trevo. We're a full-service marketing agency that makes your business look good and get noticed. We believe every brand has a unique story to tell. We make sure you look good, sound good, and have the perfect script. Visit TrevoCreative.com to learn more about how we can turn bold ideas into unforgettable brands. What is your story?
So the third fact, legend holds that Emily played a crucial role in the Battle of San Jacinto, where Texan forces under Sam Houston defeated General Santa Anna's Mexican army, leading to Texas independence from Mexico. The story suggests that Emily captivated or distracted Santa Anna, contributing to the Mexican army's unpreparedness for the surprise attack by the Texan forces. However, there is no solid historical evidence to confirm this narrative. So that's kind of what we were just talking about. Yeah.
Totally.
You know, my brother just told me, or he told me once, and it was recently, that if it all goes to pot, the only currency left will be food, weapons, and women. And he did not use the word women.
Okay. Yeah. That sounded really well done the way that you did that just then.
And I mean, that for some reason I thought about that with this. You know, you think about the Wild West, and I can't think of any time in our history, especially in Western civilization, that I would not have wanted to be a part of.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was just brutal.
I
know. But if you think about it, when you think about war, you know, why war happens, and it's money and it's power, and sometimes it's love. Or women.
Right. Yes.
I think it's very true over the history of time, and I'm sure Hassan could pop in on some of this, but that women have probably been the start and end to a couple of revolutions.
If not historically, personally, right?
Right. So I think about that a lot when I think about this topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think I'd be curious to kind of travel down this a little bit further and really gain some journalistic facts, like real facts, and see who this woman was. And like I said, I think in the next 10 years, as we're starting to celebrate anniversaries of Texas independence, you are going to see a lot of publications about her, probably museum exhibits and things like that. So I look forward to that.
It's a really great story to see memorialized. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that for me, you know, the music component to it is always the coolest part.
Well, and that's what he's kind of talking about. That's our next fact, in fact. The folk song, The Yellow Rose of Texas, was made popular by Mitch Miller, whose version reached number one in the United States in 1955, and it's believed to have been inspired by Emily's story. The original song, with its racially charged language, typical of the 19th century, hints at a romantic connection between the singer and a woman of mixed race. Wow.
You said 1955.
You're right, in 1955, but the racially charged language, she lived in the 19th century.
Okay.
So they're talking about her in this 20th century song, which I'm sure would be canceled if it's not already now. But so I'm sure we're going to strike a lot of chords with some listeners. I don't know. I think the most important takeaway for me is to make sure that whatever her truth truth is, that's honored, and that we figure out what the real story is. And maybe it was that song. That song talks about her and Santa Anna, and maybe that's where kind of some of that legend comes through. And what, in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, it was the gal they put in Santa Anna's tent, like fucking pussy power, just won Texas independence, and that's awesome, as a young woman in the 1900s. But my kid says that to me all the time. You were born in the 1900s. Like, I'm not ready for that.
No, you're like,
no, I don't.
Because you're an old soul, not old. Okay?
Yes, yeah.
There's a big difference.
No, but I think, if you think 1955, if it's number one, then we're pre-civil rights movements. We're
So
there's a lot of, that was a different and complete, even the third movement of feminism, the Me Too movement, just in this century, something like that would have never survived. But I think if the song did any justice at all, it would be that it kept that legend going, I guess. But yeah, that's all I have to say about him and his little rose.
It's funny because I think that one of the things that I dug up was that, the singing cowboy. Have you ever heard of Gene Autry?
Yeah.
Black and Whites.
Yeah.
And so he also covered it.
Wow.
And so another thing when digging about Gene is he's also another Texan.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really great. So he's from Tioga, Texas. So it's north of McKinney, which is north of Dallas, and just, south of Oklahoma.
So this happens a lot. We've been here decades, and there's still towns I've never heard of.
Oh, I know. All the time. All the time. I had to literally look it up because I was like, I've never even heard of that, let alone know where it is.
Yeah.
And then another thing that was it was just great because this song, again, talking about how much, Texas has just embraced it, and it really truly is a part of our history. I mean, do you remember the old Liz Taylor movie, Giant? Have you ever seen it?
Yes.
So I didn't realize it, but it's also in scenes there in the background too. And that was, 1956.
Yeah.
So it's still prevalent today. But isn't that wild? I mean, talk about taking a story and just making it part of your history. It's a great one to tell.
And what do you think that they were romanticizing about it? The fact that we basically, pulled the wool over his eyes, or that it was a woman, or that it was both?
I thought about that, right? Okay, so for me, knowing that song and never knowing the background or the history of it.
Sure. But you've always known that Yellow Rose is
always known that song,
a Texas
100%,
thing.
and I've known the song. And then what's actually really funny is that in 1984, Johnny Lee did a duet with a woman, and it's not exactly the Yellow Rose of Texas, but he refers to her as, I'm going home to see the Yellow Rose of Texas. And so that's always how I thought about it, was something that you love, and it's a woman, and she's beautiful, and for me it was like, blonde hair and that stereotypical person.
Well, so maybe it's interesting because it started the legend of this person, but then the Yellow Rose has now just become it's turned into just a term for endearment and independence, maybe, and love and beauty. Yeah. And obviously smarts.
And I mean, can you imagine as Emily West? I mean, if that was your legacy.
Oh man.
I mean,
I hope she knows.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing. Yes.
Man, that's awesome.
Yep.
Okay, so the last fact, Emily as the Yellow Rose of Texas has become a symbolic figure in Texas folklore, representing themes of heroism, sacrifice, and the contribution of African Americans to Texas history. The legend and the song have had a lasting impact on Texas culture and are often cited in discussions of Texas identity and history. That almost brought a tear to my eye.
Did it?
Yeah.
Why?
Because that's powerful. Like just what you were saying. What an amazing contribution, person. How awesome to be remembered and so important. Yeah. And I hope that in coming conversations, especially like I said, in this next decade, when we're seeing museum exhibitions and lectures and probably scholastic journals and all kinds of things coming out during this decade where we're coming up on the 200th anniversary of Texas independence, I hope that her legacy is reborn and rethought
Yeah.
out and
Yes.
given the respect it deserves.
You know, it's funny because to your point, I'm going to say this and we've all heard it 1,000 times, I think, but, they say that you die twice, your death and then the last time that someone speaks your name. And I feel like this is like a really cool thing. I mean,
That's a great
point.
point.
Yeah. Here we are so long after and we're still speaking and singing her name. Gosh, you can't even dream. And I bet she didn't even dream in her wildest dreams that this would be her legacy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cheers to Emily.
Yeah.
Have to do a cheers.
Yes, absolutely.
And to the Yellow Rose of Texas.
Gather round, y'all. We're ready to share a Texas size story that's beyond compare.